In the 1950s, under the bright lights of the traveling circus, a young boy formed an extraordinary bond with an aging elephant. To most, the elephant was just another performer, forced to entertain crowds, its spirit worn down by years of captivity. But to this boy, it was a gentle soul longing for kindness. As their friendship grew, he began to see the harsh reality of circus life: chains, bullhooks, and exhaustion hidden behind the spectacle. What started as an innocent connection soon became the spark of something bigger. This boy's compassion would set off a chain of events that helped change how America treated circus animals forever. But how did one small act of friendship lead to a movement? Stay with us as we uncover this incredible true story. In the 1950s, the traveling circus was one of America's most beloved forms of entertainment. Families flocked to massive tents where acrobats soared through the air, clowns tumbled across the ring, and exotic animals performed astonishing tricks. But behind the dazzling spectacle, life for these animals was far from glamorous. Elephants, lions, and tigers were often confined to small cages, transported long distances, and subjected to harsh training methods designed to break their spirits. For circus owners, these animals were business assets, expected to perform night after night, no matter the toll it took on their bodies. Amid this world of bright lights and hidden cruelty, a young boy named Tommy, a fictional name, found solace in the circus. Perhaps he was the son of a worker, or just a curious child who spent hours watching from behind the scenes. Unlike most spectators, he wasn't just captivated by the performances, he was drawn to the animals themselves. In particular, he felt a deep connection to one elephant, an aging performer named Rosie. Rosie had spent decades in the circus, her massive frame now bearing scars from years of carrying riders and executing tricks under the command of a trainer's bull hook. She moved slowly, her once powerful body now weakened by a lifetime of hard labor. Yet, when Tommy looked into her eyes, he saw something beyond exhaustion. He saw a soul longing for kindness. And so, an unlikely friendship began, one that would change not only Rosie's fate, but the future of circus animals in America. Tommy first noticed Rosie one evening after the circus had packed up for the night. While most visitors left with smiles, he lingered near the animal enclosures, drawn by the quiet rustling of hay and the distant creak of heavy chains. That's when he saw her, Rosie, the old circus elephant standing alone in the dim glow of a flickering lantern. Unlike the lively, majestic creature he had seen in the ring, she now looked tired, her massive body swaying gently as if trying to soothe herself. Curious and cautious, Tommy inched closer, offering a small apple he had tucked in his pocket. To his surprise, Rosie reached out with her trunk, gently taking the fruit before letting out a soft, rumbling sound. It was the first of many secret visits. Night after night, Tommy returned, slipping past workers to spend time with Rosie. He whispered to her, stroked her rough skin, and brought her stolen treats: sugar cubes, carrots, anything he could find. In return, Rosie responded with quiet affection, nudging him gently and wrapping her trunk around his arm in a gesture that felt like trust. But the more time he spent with her, the more he noticed the painful truth. Deep indentations from tight ropes marked her ankles, and old scars traced her back where the trainer's bullhook had struck. One evening, Tommy arrived earlier than usual and witnessed something that made his heart pound. Rosie hesitated before performing a trick, and in response, her handler struck her hard across the leg, the sharp hook tearing into her skin. She let out a low, sorrowful cry, one that echoed in Tommy's chest long after he ran home. That was the moment everything changed. He knew he couldn't just watch anymore. He had to do something. Shaken by what he had seen, Tommy couldn't stay silent. At first, he tried telling the circus workers, but they brushed him off, insisting that this was just how things were done. Frustrated but determined, he turned to the only person he thought might listen, his schoolteacher, Mrs. Caldwell. She was known for her kindness and love of animals, and when Tommy tearfully described Rosie's suffering, she didn't dismiss him. Instead, she encouraged him to write everything down. Together, they drafted letters, one to a local newspaper, another to an animal welfare group, and even one to a state official. It didn't take long for the story to gain traction. A journalist from the Daily Gazette picked up the boy's letter and published an article titled, "A Boy's Plea for a Circus Elephant." Readers were moved by Tommy's words, and soon, letters poured in from concerned citizens demanding change. An animal rights advocate named Helen Barker, who had been fighting for better treatment of circus animals, reached out to Tommy and Mrs. Caldwell. With her help, the story spread beyond their small town, reaching activists and lawmakers who had long pushed for stricter regulations on animal welfare. As protests formed outside the circus tents and petitions circulated, the pressure mounted. The once hidden cruelty of circus life was now in the public eye, and Rosie's suffering had become a symbol of something much bigger. Tommy had started a movement, one that could no longer be ignored. Tommy's story may have started as a personal fight for Rosie, but it quickly became part of a much larger movement. His letter, the newspaper coverage, and the growing public outcry added momentum to the growing debate about circus animal welfare. Activists like Helen Barker used Rosie's case as an example of why laws needed to change. By the 1960s, pressure from animal rights groups had reached Congress, and in 1966, the U.S. passed the Animal Welfare Act, the first federal law to regulate the treatment of animals in research, transport, and exhibitions. While it didn't immediately ban circus abuse, it was a crucial first step in holding animal exhibitors accountable. Over the next few decades, stricter regulations followed, and public attitudes toward animal entertainment slowly shifted. By the 1980s and 1990s, investigations into circus cruelty led to further reforms, with some circuses being fined or shut down for mistreatment. Eventually, major circus companies like Ringling Brothers faced increasing backlash, and in 2017, after years of protests and declining ticket sales, they ended their elephant performances altogether. Though Tommy's story may not be widely remembered today, his actions were part of a turning tide, one that helped shape the way America saw captive animals. His bond with Rosie was more than just an act of compassion. It was a spark that helped ignite real change. No official records exist of what became of Tommy and Rosie, but based on history, we can imagine how their story may have unfolded. With the growing public attention, it's possible that Rosie was eventually retired from the circus, either sent to a sanctuary or a zoo where she lived out her final years in peace. As for Tommy, his early stand against cruelty may have shaped the rest of his life. Perhaps he grew up to become an advocate for animals, inspired by the bond he once had with Rosie. Whether he continued his activism or simply carried the lessons with him, his actions as a child had already left a lasting impact on the world. Tommy's story is proof that even one voice, even the voice of a child, can spark change. He didn't have power, money, or influence. What he had was compassion, determination, and the courage to speak out when others turned away. And because of that, he helped bring attention to a hidden cruelty that had been ignored for too long. Today, we live in a world where animal rights movements have made incredible progress, but there is still work to be done. If one boy could help change history, imagine what we could accomplish together. If this story moved you, take a moment to learn more about the history of animal welfare and the work still being done today. Because just like Tommy, you never know when your voice could be the one that makes a difference.